Whoever can be kind of pissed about invisible things that they can't control, but show the energy that they care, is the new virtue signal pattern.
Yeah, it definitely is in a way. It's like it's also kind of like a competition too, where like I know the most. I have this secret information that not many people know about, and um, I think it's done on it's like deliberately done um, to keep people distracted. Um, because when you're going down these rabbit holes and these conspiracy theories, which may or may not be true, I'm starting to think a lot of them are just made up stories to distract us from learning about ourselves and the power we hold within ourselves. Um, which, when you think about it like that, makes a lot more sense than what these conspiracy stories are actually talking about. Because when you kind of think about, well, maybe they're just making up these stories, and then you get enough people to believe it, then it kind of just creates a reality that it is real without even actually having to be real. And now all these people, instead of focusing on themselves and their life and how they can better their life, now they're just focusing on elite pedophile rings that they're not going to do anything to stop, but they're going to put all their attention and energy into this for who knows how long, and then just be kind of stuck in this loop.
Yeah, ultimately, you can't control any of that stuff. And I don't even think that it's going on to the extent that people think it's going on. I mean, I'm out here in San Francisco, and I'll just like walk around the park at all hours of the day at any point in time. And there'll be like young kids running around doing stuff. Their parents are like, a block away doing something. They're not tapped into the idea that their kid's going to get kidnapped and then trafficked and then it doesn't exist within their world. That's why it's so free here, in a sense. So the less that they know, in a way, the less likely it's going to happen because they don't even think about it, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe there's something to that too, how if you introduce the fear of an idea, which that's what these things are, these conspiracies are designed to implant fear into you. When it's in the background of your energy, it then has a higher probability to manifest into your reality.
Hmm.
So, I mean, they take their kids to the park, no one cares, and everyone plays around, strangers everywhere, like, it's fine.
Yeah. And then, like, when you do look at these things from like a bigger, uh, zoomed out perspective, and you start to just ask questions, it's like, well, if, they say all these kids are going missing and being trafficked, where are all the parents talking about their missing kids? Like, surely if there was hundreds of thousands of these kids missing, there'd be hundreds of thousands of parents looking for their children.
That would be the biggest news story that would persist on like a daily basis at those numbers, but you don't see it.
So that just kind of makes me think that it's just a story and it's not actually true. I mean, it's maybe happening on a smaller scale, but not to the degree that these people are talking about.
So that's just one conspiracy, right? The
Yeah.
trafficking, all the abuse stuff happening, which are real to the extent, but not really. What other conspiracies have you been seeing floating around that are generating this collective momentum? But even if it was true or we found it all out, still doesn't even do anything.
Um, there's two that come to mind right away. One is chemtrails and the EMF. stuff, which chemtrails I don't think are real anymore. I think there is like weather manipulation, but I don't think they're spraying chemicals from the sky. Um, I think it's weather manipulation through frequency, which makes a lot more sense and costs way less money. So to me, that's makes a lot more logical sense because they're not if they can spend way less money, they're going to do something that's probably more effective and cost effective instead of spending millions and millions of dollars on producing chemicals to spray them from the sky, which even the amount of chemicals they would need to constantly be spraying doesn't even add up. So I don't think that's happening. And I think that's just a way to make, again, spread fear and make people afraid of the sky and clouds. And, and then you do that, and people will change how they act when they go outside and they see chemtrails, and they will generate beliefs to generate the so-called effects from these chemtrails. And then I feel like the same goes with EMF, where you just have people, again, it's almost like comical to me how people can't see. It's like a blind spot where they talk about these things and the dangers of these things, but the more they talk about, oh, like cell phone towers, your cell phone, your laptop, they're all underneath for mess, they're going to cause all this harm to you. The more they talk about it, the more they're perpetuating a story and making it real. Instead of if you just were like, I don't believe in any of that stuff, it probably wouldn't even affect you at all. But when you keep talking about a certain thing like chemtrails or EMF, you're just continuing to perpetuate that story and belief. And when you do that, you are going to see results because you're installing a program that you deeply believe.
I mean, facts all around. It's so funny how we get to this point where we have to believe in the conspiracies for a while. We like to figure reality out and go into all the fractals of things. But then the more real you become, you step out and see that there's practically no utility in believing these things at all, even if they were real. By giving it the power, it no longer has power over you, which is the cliche thing that all the people talk about. Like, don't make it real, then it's not real for you. But I don't think people really understand how true that is, you know? Like, I feel the same way about the chemtrails. I mean, I get a lot of people that I talk to every now and then that say, they sprayed the sky really heavy today, and so 2 hours later, then I felt like shit or whatever. It's like, well, if you were never educated about what they spray in the sky, how would you link those two things together?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can start to exponentially create sickness within you by finding a reason. And so, I mean, there isn't too many trails here, but I've lived in a lot of places where there are trails of whatever it is. And I never feel the effects from it.
Yeah,
I'm in Wi-Fi places all the time. I'm like on technology 12 hours a day. I'm not degenerating from the waves. I mean, what's the confluence there, which is making us different, other than we just don't really care about this stuff? It's like, whatever.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel the same way. I, I feel like when I was kind of in those rabbit holes and conspiracy theories, I was just putting more of my energy towards that stuff. And then when I stopped doing that, I just was like, I don't care. I don't pay attention to it. And I'm just going to live my life. And I don't notice any effects from those things because I just choose not to believe in it.
Yeah, and that could be even something that seems like a digression in a way to like, oh, well, it's too exhausting to believe the conspiracies because it's always a new thing after the other, and so you don't want to keep up with it, so you're just tired out or whatever. You'll hear that sometimes, be like, you couldn't handle to the extent of the truth. But it's
Yeah.
not even like that, man. It's like, what's the point?
No, it's not, because there's no end to it. And I can speak to it because I used to be like that, and like not even that long ago. And you're just like always like, I gotta figure out the next thing. I gotta be in the know. If I'm not in the know, then like I'm fucked. um,
Really,
and you're
it
just
ties in.
continuing searching.
It ties into everything that we were talking about in the last episode. How perhaps we stopped being this way because we don't take psychedelics. I really think that's it. I mean, when I was taking psychedelics a lot, I was more in the mindset that my power existed somewhere outside of me in these weird, wacky realms where I had to go and search and discover. And so that function of always searching for something external happened to carry on to also conspiracy related things. And if I just gather the right knowledge, then my mental compartments will be put together and I'll finally know the answer. And then what? It never has an end point. You,
Yeah, exactly. People are searching for an end when there's no end. And there definitely is a thread between the psychedelics and conspiracy and searching through truth. But I mean, I'm not searching for truth anymore. If anything, it's just kind of dismantling the illusions and figuring out that most stuff is just kind of bullshit. Um, Make believe stories projected on to society for people, for the collective consciousness to pick up and kind of make real through, you know, through the collective consciousness. If enough people believe in it, then it's going to become real, even though it was just a story to begin with. Um, and truth, I don't, for the most part, there is no truth, because what what everybody believes is true to them, because what you believe is always going to be true to you. So there's billions and billions of truths all happening simultaneously.
yeah, that's why, like, when you have an interaction with someone or like someone's trying to start an argument with you about their beliefs, their conspiracies that they believe, and you're trying to tell them this or that, none of it ever goes anywhere because the reason why people say anything at all is because they believe what they're saying. That's why they're saying it right now. So why would they think any other differently? And that effect is carrying itself out to pretty much everything. The reason why anyone acts the way that they act, even like crime, violence, or whatever, to the extent of all things, it's always this effect that that is a thing that made the most sense for that person right now, given the context of where they are. And
Yeah.
we have all our rights and wrongs about that, but that's literally how it always is. And I think it's hard
Mm-hmm.
for the human mind to wrap their head around that.
It it is hard because most people live in a very like narrow perspective life, where it's just like me, and what I think is right, and they're not wrong because that's all they know. So what they believe is true to them, but they've never even had the thought that other people believe different things. So maybe there's more than what I believe to be, which could be true. Which is why when you start trying to find truth, you're never going to find it, because It's always changing, and there's a million things that can be true.
Yeah, I mean, when you're interacting with truth, you're interacting with yourself in a loop where you're looking at something or you're contemplating something, either external or internal. And what you view as true is always like bouncing back to you. So in a way, the more you up level and advance yourself and become more conscious, whatever the stuff even means anymore, you're just interfacing with more layers of truth that keeping on unfolding. And yeah, it goes on forever because you're just interacting with more and more of you. And at some point, that starts to take on a projection where people want to put that out to the world. Like, this thing is true. We all need to like get on this movement and expose, you know, and none of it, I just see none of it going anywhere or ever will go anywhere.
Yeah, it's and then, yeah, you see that in the truther community, this which is like the conspiracy, and then you see it in like the spiritual communities, where someone's like, I have just gotten the sacred download, and I need to tell everybody all the codes that I just had. And it's like, well, that's probably true to you, but it might not be true to everyone.
I mean, there's some things here in the world that are universal, which might step beyond the realm of what truth is. But man, the more I think about those, there's just less and less of those things. And it's almost not even important. Like, we're all universally here in this weird and wacky dimension. We all have eyes that we can see into the world, into each other. You'll never be able to ever see yourself the way a person can see you. Like, these type of constraints are what are true. The more abstract we get away from our character. But the more we talk about the internal sense of the self, creation, blah, 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 spiritual experience, it's so subjective that it really does kind of lose its whole point in even talking about it, you know? I can't believe people talk about this stuff. You know, divine this, divine that, how to follow your sacred journey. Super strange, man.
Yeah, it's it's weird.
I mean, to me, the ultimate sense of freedom would be where you can do anything that you want, but it's attached to a high moral and integrity system. Because, I mean, you don't just want to go out doing crazy stuff and then say, oh, it's true for me and that I can just do whatever I want. That's where it starts to anchor into where, like, no, you can't really do that. But when your freedom is non attached to you having to do anything, like some people say, like, if you drink out of these things, aluminum cans, it, 30 years from now, I'm going to die from cancer because there's some chemical or, I mean, there's so much fear around almost everything nowadays.
Yeah,
None of it's real.
exactly. And those are the people that think they're like the freest, but they're afraid of everything.
I mean, I guarantee I have at least a couple seed oils a day.
Yeah,
I had some seed oils every day, guarantee. And I'm just like,
I
fine,
mean,
man.
yeah, I mean, there are some Instagram accounts where it's like that I used to follow, where it was literally like, again, the people couldn't see the paradox that they were living in, whether they like think they're free or like some truth, but or they're not fearful at all, but they're really afraid of everything because they're like, oh, aluminum can, seed oils, the clothes that they're
Tap
wearing,
water.
or tap water, just like literally every almost single thing is like, I can't touch that, or I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be healthy, or I'm not going to be spiritual, or whatever. And it's like, how do you not see you're living like the most restrictive life ever? That's not freedom. Freedom is being able to drink out of a can, to drink tap water and not affect you, or to eat seed oils. It doesn't mean you have to do it all the time, but that's true freedom, to be able to do whatever you can without being fearful of it.
And that effect takes place in every dimension of life. Just not really being tied down by things. By trying to optimize every part of yourself, in a strange way, it's more fear than it is pursuing freedom. Or maybe it's trying to pursue freedom by, you know, implanting more fear because people think freedom exists in that narrow bandwidth. It's like the people that say all the time, like, discipline equals freedom. And I like Jocko Willink. He's a pretty good
Mm-hmm.
guy. But I would kind of have to agree. I mean, some days it's totally okay to not be disciplined and to just let yourself relax, chill, don't have to hustle and grind and all this kind of stuff. And that's a form of freedom. This idea that we always have to be busy and always working on something, advancing ourselves, growing, man, it's a scam. For what? You know, this always goes back to that same thing, that end point. Like say you got the thing, you got the result of whatever you're thinking. Now what? It's never enough.
Yeah. Yeah, there is no end. There's just layers upon layers.
So we got all these conspiracies, all these crazies trying to talk about their version of reality. And I think the masses are getting done with it, but where are we transitioning into, you know, because we have to transition to something clearly more beneficial. So then that starts to get into the idea of how much of the world do we need to improve? Because the way I said it before earlier, when you see how everything is positioned exactly how it should be, given the the state of development of every being and where things are, where does this desire to change the external world come from? Because I would argue it comes from a person's ability to want to change their world, but they flip it around, try to change the external world first before changing their world. But because you never can change the external world, it always keeps people in a loop where, oh, that must be the reason why I'm not this or this, because the chemtrails are still in the sky, or there's still chemicals in
Mm-hmm.
the food. And so, you know what, I might as well just give up because, you know, the world's never going to be the way I want it to be. And so, therefore, that's why I fail. I think that's the anchor point that this hits on.
Yeah, so that's pretty spot on.
People need things in the external world to change in order to give themselves the permission to change. But because the world is increasingly getting more and more fucked up, it's giving more and more people the reason not to change. Which maybe that's the whole point of the psyops. Is maybe those that run the psyops know
Yeah,
this.
yeah. I mean, that's makes sense. Like we'll just create all these distractions. Like I think what I said like earlier, creating distractions to lead people away from themselves and make them fearful, and then they end up not working on themselves, which then leads to nothing externally getting changed, because if you want the external to change, you have to change the internal. But yeah, like you said, they're just like, oh, this is happening, so why does it even matter?
I mean, if you've watched, 20 hours of videos talking about interdimensional reptilian beings at the center of the universe trying to suck your soul out of your body in the astral realms, I don't know how you would really want to move forward with anything in your life. It's like, well, now that I know that, why should I work a job or start a family or this or that?
Yeah,
Nothing I could do about that. And I think that's what we're dealing with, man. But it's like that's one topic. There's another one. There's another one. And the combination of them all hit all of those points within a person's development that it keeps
Yeah,
people destabilized.
there's one for every stage, and you just
There's a psyop for every stage.
yeah. I mean, it's funny because was it at work today or the other day? Some lady came in and she was just like, "Yeah, they're gonna be taking all the cash away and making stuff a digital currency, so they can just take all our money." And it's like, no, I mean, I didn't. I'm not gonna argue with people. You're just like, yeah, okay. But you got people thinking like stuff like that. But again, it's like, well, if you just thought about it a little longer, it's like they don't need to do a digital currency. First of all money's already pretty much digital, and they don't need like a digital Fed coin currency to take your money. I mean, they could just go into your bank account and take your money. They don't need some new digital currency to do that. Also, why would they do that? Because they want people spending money in the economy to give. Like, it just doesn't make, like, when you start looking at it, there's just so many holes in some of these conspiracy theories. But, people see, 3 videos on TikTok or Instagram Reels about someone talking about this with fearful music in the background, and they're just like, oh my God, the government's trying to steal all our money and track all of our transactions. And da 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 da. It's like, I mean, maybe to a degree some of that's true, but if you really look about it, there's probably a lot of beneficial things to going about something like that. But they just put out this like fearful predictive programming to make people live in a dystopia that doesn't even exist.
I mean, literally, that's how I've begun to think about some of this stuff. Like back to the chemtrails or whatever. Like, what if everything that's a conspiracy is literally a very good thing that is happening in the world, but the powers that be create the negative force around it to get us to reject it? Like, what if they're putting the chemicals in the sky to actually do something really beneficial? Or what if they have to implement the Fed coin and the digital idea system because some weird event's going to happen where we require that? And you know what I mean? Like, you can start to
Yeah,
flip it around where what if all of this is happening to plan? And I think that's always the major factor in all of this that really hits a lot of people is they see a conspiracy theory as something that's negative. That's the only way they see it. This thing, this new thing that's happening, it's negative. It's bad. I'm against it. And whenever you're just against something without seeing like both sides to it, I'm always really interested in how that works. Because I try to see the both sides of everything. The more that you do,
yeah,
it's hard to see something positive, negative. It's kind of like whatever.
yeah. It's kind of like it is what it is.
I mean, I use cash for 2 stores in total that I just go around here. I go to this restaurant, this coffee shop. They both like accept cash still, but the rest of the places are basically all digital. And I'll like
Yeah,
scan my Face ID with my Cash App, and like that's how I pay for things. And it's a tremendously good product and service. It's like, oh, of course, this would make sense. This is how money is. But
yeah.
there's all this fear around
But
this
even
stuff.
yeah, I mean, you can tie it into like the whole AI stuff, where people are. You have a lot of people that are like super fearful of it, and then other people unsure, and then you have people who are like, it's probably gonna be a really good thing for humanity, and the people that are fearful of it know absolutely nothing about it.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of that what was that one app? The Luma app or something? That like it was probably January when the AI thing was really popping off and everyone was posting on their feeds essentially these AI generated photos of themselves.
Oh, the Lenza,
Yeah, Lensa.
yeah,
So for those that aren't familiar, you take a picture of your face, like 25 different photos from different angles. You upload to this app, and then it generates an image of your face, like in an artificial form. You can type in a character or whatever, it will make like a fantasy image. And I mean, now the systems are so advanced that they're even beyond that, where you can make 3D models of yourself and actually put yourself in a metaverse. And I just look at this stuff and think, at the time, everyone was so freaking out about this. And I thought, it's kind of cool actually that more of ourselves can exist digitally. We can actually position our character in the digital world, interact with each other. It's kind of a cool idea when you think about what the metaverse is. But again, people really like to think, oh man, it's people are just going to spend all day in the metaverse and forget real reality. We're all going to, that's again one of those things. Then what?
Yeah. They're like, oh, you did that, Lenza. You signed your soul away, or you gave permission for AI to clone you or something. It's like, what? What are you talking about? How do you know that? And also, you think you know more than your soul does? Like, no way. Like, your soul chose to come here and experience everything. Like, it knows what you're doing, or what it's doing, and the choices being made.
So maybe it's a lack of trust in one's journey
Yeah.
that gets them to think fearfully about things they can't control. Lack of trust is the root anchor point.
Yeah. And it's not lack of trust in yourself, it's lack of trust in the system. Like, not trusting that the universe or whatever, knows exactly what to do for you.
I mean, that's one of the most ancient fears that we've had for the longest time. I mean, when you think about religion, it's basically the same way. I grew up going to church like 4 or 5 days a week. And all that is just fear. Like, you have to do this thing, you have to pray to this God, you have to ask whoever into your heart, and magically all your pain will be taken away, and you're promised a good life afterwards as your reward for obeying the rules which don't make sense. We've always been pushing away from things that we fear. And what I've noticed, like, after kind of getting to this point where I no longer fear death, I don't think so. A lot of the needed desire to follow conspiracies or follow some new crazy thing that's happening, it just goes away. Have you also made a similar correlation to that idea that the fear of death may be the overarching thing that builds the context for everything we're talking about now?
Um, yeah, I think so. I think it does. It's the underlying factor for everything. Like, I mean, with you go in the food, if I eat this, it's gonna kill me. Oh, chemtrails. Oh, it's gonna kill me. Like, it's everything definitely is tied back to death. EMF. It's gonna hurt me. It's everything harming you, which leads to potentially taking years off your life to death. So yeah.
I think that's it. That's the main thing that this all centers around, but it's very briefly there in the background, but it's always attached
Yeah.
is death some way.
Yeah. And I've definitely had that epiphany before where it's just like everything, like everyone, has that underlying fear, which basically we just said is like this attachment to death. Um, just because it's unknown and people don't know what's going to happen. But it's kind of funny if you have this fear for death, but then you live a fearful life in constraint and aren't actually living your life.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe, I mean, one work on that relationship to death, because in a way it's on another higher level, it's the relationship to the unknown, which also pivots around these ideas. Like, you don't really know what any end point of any conspiracy is. You don't really know. None of us know for sure, but we like to know. And by putting that position of what we think it is, humans, like, we really like to have a placeholder for things which we will never know, but we like to at least know that there's a slot there. You know what I'm saying? We like to at least put something like fake data in the hole to make us feel better, even though we actually really don't know. We'd rather have there be something than nothing.
Mm-hmm. And, yeah, it's people want that comfort.
I mean, that's kind of an epiphany I've had, is like the journey of self awakening feels like you get lighter and lighter in your spiritual body. But the lightness comes from an increasingly sense of emptiness, which also happens at the same time. That's why you get lighter, is you become less, like, more and more empty, because that's connected to the lightness. And
Uh-huh.
that emptiness, I think we like to fill those like little windows with all this information about who we think we are. And when we're talking about the ego, in a sense, I think the ego is just when you're fully packed with all those slots of all these things that you think you are. And so removing the ego, having an ego death, is taking all those things, eliminating it to where you're just a blank slate. And that's the metaphysical process of awakening. And that's the only thing that's important. So all these conspiracies and these things, none of that, none of the understanding of that ever help with that process. Just, it's a nice way to pass the time.
Yeah, definitely. I'll pass a lot of time. Golly.
Well, there's accounts every day that are dedicated to talking about the new things, but man, I
Yeah,
really can't get into it anymore.
yeah. I can't either. It's a relief because you do expel a lot of energy into that stuff and attention, and I mean, it drains you. It does, and then you're just like, it gives you anxiety because then you're like, oh, and fear.
Everyone's an agent.
Yeah, but when you start to just be like, I don't really care about that anymore. I just kind of want to live my life and, you know, live it as it kind of comes through me, and and I move forward through it. And I feel like anything you need to know, you don't really necessarily need to go searching for. It'll come to you in the right moment. Um,
Yeah, that's always going to happen.
like you don't need. I mean, definitely don't need to watch the news. That's all fucking bullshit. But if there's something important going on in the world and you're not tapped in that stuff, somebody's gonna tell you, and you're just be like, "Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know that. Now I do."
Yeah, all this really stems on things that we otherwise would have never known about if it weren't for the internet. And it makes me think that what the digital sphere is making is a type of mechanism where it gets easier and easier to imagine things that aren't real, because we now see pictures of it, we see videos of it, there's many people talking about it. And those interactions are very primal. We need pictures and images and audio to make sense of the world. And so when you're scrolling through social media, that's all it is. And there's always some brand new thing. But like what
Yeah.
I'm always saying is like there could be some crazy new thing that just happened a mile away and that'd still probably not even affect me. And when you think about it, all the things that happen, like a bad event, a school shooting, or this or that, whatever thing we can create that's terrible, it only means as much to those that were directly involved in the moment of it happening. Any other abstraction away from turning it into some
Yeah.
political thing or like it, what's this mean for the world? That's that's the thing that gets people so confused because you weren't there, you didn't
Yeah.
know, so you
Yeah.
can't generate a good opinion about it.
Yeah. They're pulling at the emotional tethers of people. A
Like,
lot of these events,
what if this was
it
your
gets people
kid?
all riled up.
What if your kid was this at that school? Or what if your kid was? They create these fake scenarios to
Yeah.
put in the minds of the masses. To that, like, well, now what do we do with all this fearful energy? It circles in on that again. Like,
Yeah.
it reminds me of people that always like to think of the worst case scenario first before the positive one. I'm sure you've been around people that are like that, where it's like, hey guys,
Mm-hmm.
let's go do this thing. And everyone's really excited. But then there's always that one person that's like, oh, well, this could happen. And we all collectively know, like, the chances of that happening, it won't happen, but why even bring it up, kind of a thing, right? And they always like do that with everything. That's what we're going through in the world right now is trying to bring up every instance of what about this? What about this? What about this? And it's like none of that shit's real. No one cares. Move on.
Yeah. It's a fight for people's attention because attention is energy.
It
And
is.
it's interesting that this guy a couple months told me he was like, I can't remember exactly, but like the context of it was like your soul is your attention in a way because it takes so much attention for your soul to be in this body right now. And that's what everyone are these, you know, whatever elite, whatever people or that make these events happen or fighting for is your attention, or even just like big corporations and stuff. They're just fighting to get your attention.
Trying to control the interface of your screen of reality
Yeah,
and put all those plugins in you.
yeah.
Put
It's
templates over you, plugins, and put you in the matrix.
mm-hmm. And when you can learn, and that's what I've been practicing over the past couple months. And I mean, it's a lifetime practice. Is focusing, learning to have a focused and clear mind, so I can have a fuller grasp of my attention, and then learning to rewire my beliefs so I can be like my full potential as a human being and learn to live my best life. It's not fucking easy to do. It's definitely something that, you'll be practicing and doing for your entire life. But the more you do it, the better you get.
The better you get, and also new challenges come. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like we're repeating the same lesson and lesson over again. That sometimes takes an effect. But once you learn a lesson, then you get served the next challenge. And it will probably be a challenge that is something different to what you've experienced that require you to navigate all of the traits that you have in a different way and you'll probably fail a couple times, and like that's just how every level of life goes. I mean, you could be 60 years old and still learning something new, but what you can learn at 6 years old, another person could have learned at 20. But you know what I mean? So like the levels in a way are almost non-linear to our age in
Yeah,
some ways.
yeah. Well, life, you think you live life. I mean, in ways you do live life in linear, but you're really, we're really multidimensional, and you can. I mean, that's one of the ways in you're multidimensional. Is like people learn things at different times in their life. Some people learn them quicker. Some people learn them older at an older age. But there's no, set in stone thing. Like at 35, you're going to learn these lessons. Like you just said, no, you might learn those at 18 or you might learn them at 45. Just depends on where you are in your life.
Yeah, and other lessons that you're supposed to learn at 50, you'll have down by your 30, and it's scattered in a way.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own curriculum that's linear for them, but in the order of it, it's different for everyone.
Yeah. And one of these things um, in the course that I'm doing with the higher ideal, Ryan, he talks about like your probable selves and how you can tap into your probable selves and kind of experience what it would be like to go through certain scenarios and then tie that back into your present, or when you go into your past and you're like, if I made this choice, what that would have been like, or if I did this. And you can kind of like switch up almost your like timelines and take that knowledge and bring it back to your present.
So is that a visualization exercise?
Uh, Not really. I mean, kind of, but not really.
More of just a contemplation, deep moment
Like,
sort of a thing?
like contemplation and like really feeling it in your body of what that would have felt like.
That's interesting. So when you're comparing those different timelines, are these on a moment to moment basis or more like are they short term or long term life choices?
I guess you could do either. I haven't played with it too much, but I mean, yeah, you could technically could do either because all of these probable selves are all happening simultaneously.
It's like, okay, I woke up in the middle of the night or like at 5 o'clock. I could get up right now and start working and have an amazing day. Or I could go to sleep and wake up at 9 and start the
Mm-hmm.
day how I normally start it. Like that kind of a thing.
Exactly.
I see.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, well, both those things are happening. Just like, which one are you choosing in the this life you're living now?
That's interesting because one of those things happened before the other. Like in that scenario,
Yeah.
there's the delayed timeline, which is like wake up at 9 or 8 o'clock. Or there's the take the action now, which is get up now and do the thing. So I wonder if there's almost how close you get to the time of action determines the best probable self type of a thing.
Yeah. And then, like, in the end, there really is no best or worst because whatever you choose is what kind of was meant to be chosen, you know?
Yeah, I could see that.
Like, every choice you made up until this point in your life is kind of how you got to this point in your life. I mean, you could have had slight variations and still be where you are today, but, you know, overall, pretty much everything you made who you, is who is made you who you are now. And I've definitely thought about stuff like in the like if I didn't go here, like if I didn't go to college here and I went somewhere to college else, would I have been who I am now? Maybe not. Or would
Yeah,
it just
probably not. In a way, what
so
what are you then if you rearrange your past experiences and that changes your current you? What are you then if you're just a result of that process, you know? It's kind of interesting to think about.
yeah, it's so strange.
Reality is one big computer game, man. It's
Yeah.
even if it's
It,
not, it works like one, which is enough to make it
I
so.
yeah, I mean I definitely think it is. Like it seems very much like a computer game. Like it's just a super advanced simulation.
Yeah, and we'll see what the metaverse is in 20 years. It'll probably, I mean, I'm paying attention to what they're doing a lot in 3D modeling programs, and the stuff that you can create nowadays is basically real life. And they're now working on generative AI, which where you can generate whole scenes or you can
Oh
have a
yeah.
forest and then have it auto populate an entire node, like tree of a bunch of forests, like in a click of a button, but
Hmm.
without having to design each and every one.
Yeah.
It's all
I
totally
mean,
realistic. It's like we're in a game, man.
for like, yeah, I mean, for like my job, I do the the marketing stuff, and I just use like Adobe Express to make like flyers and stuff like that. And now they have like a beta version of a generative AI, and it's okay, but yeah, you just like type in a couple words, it's like it's not as good as like mid journey and stuff like that where you type in stuff. But it's yeah, I mean all that technology is so crazy, and more or less, and what they actually have is probably even crazier. They're just showing you probably what's you know was in development 10, 15 years ago, and now it's released to the public.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a conspiracy. That
That is a
seems to be true.
conspiracy, but that's something that yeah, that seems to be a little more. It's not like a wild. I mean, technology, like kind of out there, but makes a little more sense.
I mean, they're even doing it with ChatGPT. So the ChatGPT now is way less worse than it was like even 3 months ago. It has been
Yeah,
severely downgraded because before it was extremely powerful, but now getting it to work right or just do a simple little thing, it's not as smart. And so I think they're tuning these things down, which must mean that the models that they have behind the scenes are even crazier.
yeah, but is there like a paid version of Chat GPT
Even the
too?
paid version. The paid
Oh, even the
version
paid version.
now is worse than the free version was 3 months ago. That's pretty widely talked about these days. But now there's
So
like
they're like,
20 new AI
they were like, this is too
startups.
good. We gotta turn it down a notch.
Yeah, I mean, I'd pay $100 a month to get back what it was 3 months ago. It's just crazy. But
Yeah, I mean, I still use it from time to time, but what I'm using it for is I'm like, it still works pretty well because I'm not using it for anything super complicated except for like writing summaries. Like, give me a event summary for this event that I'm about to do, or a description for this. It does relatively well.
yeah, I recently did another podcast with someone. We talked more about the AI stuff. We kind of talked about how, with the advances of AI, where is that going to put us as humans because we tie so much of what we can do to our work and our productivity. But man, that's just going away. With AI, it's just taking away job after job after job. And perhaps it's creating new ones from it. But I see this stuff as a
Yes.
good thing. I mean,
I mean, I see it as a good thing too. I mean, if that does happen and it frees up, like you're not paying these wages to employees, then basically you can be, I guess it would be kind of like that universal basic income where you're just giving people the money you would be paying them to be working, but to, to be doing other things that are, I guess, more inducive to what people would be rather doing in their free time and kind of getting paid for things you enjoy instead of maybe things you didn't enjoy. I don't know, but
I mean, think about it this way. How many jobs are there available now that are basically worthless jobs? Like they don't provide any value. A lot of jobs
yeah, I mean,
are
there's a lot of them like that.
they're business to business services that are, you know, interacting with other businesses at different levels and providing them services. Like that's so many what jobs are. What if that was all
Yeah,
AI'd away? It was all automated.
yeah. I mean, I think for like a lot of fast food restaurants, you'll probably see that go to AI because it's just like you don't really need. I mean, no one's like serving you. You don't have a waitress. It's just you're just ordering food, and the customer service a lot of times at fast food is not very good. So you don't really need a human there. You might have like one or two, just kind of like making sure shit doesn't, you know, things don't catch on fire. Um, but other than that, yeah, I could see like lots of fast food restaurants going all AI for most of the jobs.
And people will say this too, like, oh, that's terrible because AI is taking away jobs. Man, who wants to work at a fast food restaurant? Like, oh, wow,
Yeah,
they took away a job. It's like, well, I mean, all the jobs could be taken away. And what if we all just did everything that we wanted to do and we got paid a universal basic income for it? And what if there are some people who genuinely like to pave the roads, genuinely like to do plumbing, genuinely like to do all the things that are actually like an AI can't do right now? I would see that it would actually start to build the real utopia that we all envisioned instead of having all these bullshit jobs. I mean, so
yeah,
many jobs are just so dumb. They do nothing. And the more AI can handle those things, it frees up humans to do what they want. Then it's all about, well, how can we balance, those humans being paid accordingly? Which then, like, well, what do you need money for? Food, shelter, and basic provisions. I mean, that's all I need money for. In terms of how much I spend per day, I spend $5 at the coffee shop, $20 on food. In terms of my rent per month in a daily accordance, add another like $40. I only need $50 a day to survive. And that's about how much I spend. And that's basically true for everyone. It's all our wants and desires and needs that get in the way of all this stuff. We think we need so much stuff, man.
yeah. They don't need as much as you think.
I mean, people are always saying too, like the 2030 agenda or whatever, right? You
Yeah,
will own nothing, you'll be happy. Well, I already basically own nothing, and I'm pretty happy. Like I said before, like my budget per day is like nothing. If I have my computer and my phone and this microphone and my e-bike, man, I'm happy. And I basically own nothing. And I'm already happy. And it's only been a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of those other things that people project like a dystopia on. It's not actually going to be like this dystopia that people think it's going to be, and it'll probably be a better thing. And then people don't even know that it's happening. And it just gets kind of accepted.
I mean, I was watching this YouTuber the other day. He made a video, and he's just kind of funny to watch. And his claim was essentially what I just made here, which was before we to have luxurious experiences, we needed to have to actually own the thing. And so therefore that's why we required like buying a house, buying a fancy car, this and that, is because to have access to those experiences, we need to own them. But now if you want to go, to like have a nice experience, you can go on Airbnb and rent a house that someone else has paid for. You rent it for a couple $100, try out a city, try out a new town, whatever, and you have a house that you can rent and have the same experience without having to own it. That's a far more superior experience. If you want to go rent a car, I rent cars all the time because I don't have one. And I rent cars with the Turo app. You can rent any car you want with like a click of a button. I
Yeah.
don't have to own the car to rent like something nice for the day. So there's just so many goods and services that are now available that we actually don't have to own them ourselves to enjoy them, which in my opinion is greater because who wants to maintain a car, a house? It's more easier than ever to live the nomad lifestyle. Even our jobs are now online. Many people work online.
Yeah. Think yeah, I think a lot of people don't really look at it that way.
Again, just take like seeing things through to the end of it. You realize so much of this stuff is a good thing. Like our parents' generation, they didn't know any of this was coming. And here we are, the younger generation, and we're mostly doing fine. It's a good thing, man. All these things are good. But I think people have to be at the right perception level to recognize that it's a good thing, which in a way is altering a person's truth because whatever they feel is true. So, but I think this is
Yeah.
what's true.
Yeah. I mean, it's changing your beliefs, rewinding your beliefs. Once you'll only think what's true about what you believe, and you'll only have the perception of your world through your beliefs. So if you don't change your beliefs, then yeah, you're just gonna keep thinking things are going to burn to the ground, or we're gonna live in some crazy, author dystopian future.
I mean, the world is so big, man. It's hopping on that airplane. I don't go on planes too often, but hopping on the airplane to go back to the Midwest for a week or two. I was just like watching the scenery down below. The world is so big, man.
Yeah.
There's no way that you can just control every square foot of the world. It's just, in some places, it may get increasingly dystopian, but there'll always be patches and little places within there where it's not everywhere. But I don't even think it's going to be dystopian anymore.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think
For a while there, it
I
was
don't
getting
know what's
dark. 20,
what.
2021, 2022, it was getting
Yeah.
pretty sketch.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, during that time, I was still also. I mean, I did not have the mind frame that I have right now.
But we need to
I
see
mean,
what we all need to see.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that was just. I don't know. It had to happen.
The collective
Yes.
event where we all had to
Yeah.
see what was behind the scenes. It had to happen this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. But the good thing is, it seems the world won't fall into those tricks again.
Yeah.
It'd be, I don't see a future timeline here where that would even be possible. It would just get shut down the first day again, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think most people just be like, no. And you still got the few people that are walking around scared. But yeah. I mean, it seems like the next thing they're trying to do is aliens. So
Stay tuned for that.
stay stay tuned for holographic alien invasion.
Yeah, I thought that would have came a little bit sooner. For a while there was kind of heating up. You know,
Yeah. I
Las
think they're
Vegas
still
had
like,
one or
damn.
something.
Yeah, there's. I think they're still like, damn it, people aren't really biting it. So maybe they are going to do it soon because they're like, we really need to kick it up a notch.
Yeah, the government announces aliens literally the next day. No one cares. It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
we already knew that, or we know
Yeah.
it's a lie, so we don't give a fuck.
Yeah. I feel like I said, I don't really know what the fuck I'm thinking about aliens more. I'm like, I don't know if they're there or what the fuck is going on. But as soon as the government starts talking about something, it just makes me think, probably not true.
Yeah, that is what's been helpful about all this is I don't think the younger generation would have quite had that same distaste for the government's ideas if they weren't given a reason to. But now several young people know, like, oh yeah, whatever, not into it, don't watch the news, whatever. And I don't think that that effect would have ever taken place if there wasn't some event which would propagate that.
Yeah.
So again, maybe this all had to happen. I mean, I've watched some conspiracies where people said that they had to announce this stuff this way to get that effect. So it was never supposed to be, you know what I mean? Like, there's always a reason
Yeah.
for everything.
Yeah.
Like, they had
Yep.
to expose it in such a way to get us to retaliate, to get us all up to the level to where we would recognize that this was going to happen 5 years from now. That's why it was so sloppy this time around, to get us on edge. Like, there's reasons for everything. Trump is in control. That's
Yeah.
another conspiracy, man.
Yeah.
It's all according to plan. Q. Q has got the plan.
That
Yeah,
was,
maybe.
who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But who really cares? Because it doesn't even if all that stuff is true, it doesn't matter. Because
All right. So the last
like,
question of the day is what matters to you right now?
what matters to me is just I would say what matters to me is learning to get to know myself better and learning to slow down and actually be more patient and to keep growing and expanding.